Bullying. Its scope is much larger than people realize. Known as the silent epidemic, it is on the rise in the workplace, in our schools, our neighborhoods. Studies show bullying, it's not random. It has reasons in the bully's mind, even if those reasons are unwarranted and unfair. In this segment, we're going to explore a bit bullying, just how to identify a bully and how to respond to the taunting and harassment. To help us better understand this national problem, I'm pleased to be joined now by bullying expert Karl Romain. He is the author of this book, The Self-Confidence Factor, A Parent's Guide to Bully Prevention. And Sam Pirazzolo is vice president of the New York City Parents Union. Welcome to both of you. I have to ask you first right off the bat, what is the Parents Union?
So the Parents Union is founded by Mona Davids, who is a single mom, parent of 2 children. And we believe that all children in New York City have the right to a quality and sound education. And we are very willing to work with any group that approaches us to make sure that children and students are well taken care of in their schools.
Yeah, we hear stories every day of bullying, and they end in violence often at IS 117 just recently. Why do you feel bullying is so prevalent right now?
Well, I don't know that bullying is any more prevalent than it's ever been, other than we're paying attention to it right now.
More reporting of it.
Yes.
Well, definitely, and I think social media has heightened that. You know, the fact that cyberbullying is a major component now. When it used to be before you leave school, you go home, and that was the end of it. Now it follows you home. So there's many more incidents of it, and I think it's being reported, like you said, a lot more.
Now, I saw a statistic that said that 40 to 80% of school-age children experience bullying at one time during their school career. That's astronomical.
Absolutely.
Why?
We're talking about 3.2 million families that are impacted by bullying every single year. 160,000 kids miss school every single year because, every single day because they're afraid to go.
What is it that precipitates this?
Well, I don't really know what precipitates it, other than, if you just want to talk about the nature of the way things are. There are people who are stronger and there are people who are weaker, and that's just the way that it is.
And how do you identify a bully?
You can identify a bully by their behavior. A bully's usually pretty aggressive, and they're pretty persistent in what they're doing. Also, they tend to rally other people up against a single individual. They single them out.
Now, Parents Union. Parents, of course, are very, very concerned. What are parents doing to try and attack this problem?
Well, parents bring, if you want to talk about the school in particular where the stabbing was, parents, the father was there. They were telling the school that there was an incident. Their son had a problem. There were cases of these children following the boy home and urinating on his door and just all sorts of stuff. To not have an incident report filed at the school, if that's true, is just beyond outrageous.
Now, are the schools falling down? Because there was a report out this past week that in the year 2012, 2013, 1,378 schools in New York City reported 0 incidents of any bullying or any harassment. What are the schools were afraid to report it? Does it have an impact on it?
Ben Chapman did a good job on that story, and it's a multifaceted what you're asking. Sometimes the schools are afraid to report it, but I don't want to put blame on the teachers or administrations, because there are times that the teachers fear for their safety when they intervene in bullying issues. And a lot of times, even if they don't fear for their safety, they know that, well, if I work on this, really nothing is going to happen, the aggressor is going to remain, or they're going to be rewarded with a poorly named superintendent suspension. There's really no consequence. And until the Department of Education decides that there must be a consequence against the aggressor, removing that student from the classroom if they have to and putting them into an intensive, supervised structure, it's just not going to happen. They talk about all sorts of preventions, and and I spoke to Karl, and his plans are great, and everybody's plans are good. But what we need is a system for when the plans fail and the attack happens. We don't have that now, or at least nothing anyone's willing to back up.
No, there's more that the city government and the Board of Education have to do.
Well, everybody has to work together. It's not just about the schools. In my opinion, it's also the parents, it's the schools, it's law enforcement. We all have to come together and make some policies and make some decisions around what's going to happen, especially, like you said, what's going to happen with the aggressor and what's going to happen with the victim. In my book, when I was doing the research, what I found was a lot of victims were not getting the help that they truly needed. And so that's why I kind of wrote it, because parents were calling me. They were saying, hey, listen, my child's being bullied. I don't know what to do. What should I do? So in the book, we try to cover as many different scenarios as we can, everything from how to work with the schools, how to communicate that your child needs help and getting him the help that he needs, and more importantly, how to instill confidence in your kids.
And as you had said to me earlier, that often the victim is victimized doubly in a situation.
Well, you know, so to help parents out, what I would say to them so they don't get victimized doubly is they should Google New York City Chancellor's regulations and go to Regulation A832, I believe, and that explains the school's responsibilities and duties of what they should do as far as reporting incidents. I also happen to be the president of Community Education Council 31 on Staten Island, and just recently we passed resolution number 83, which addresses the online occurrence reporting system. And we brought up some very good points, and we brought this to the Department of Education's attention, and unfortunately we've had no response. And what we've said is that usually bullying occurs within one class or within one school year. And when a child is promoted, very often the victim and the bully are promoted together. But the teacher in the future does not necessarily know there was a conflict. Or if they're going from elementary school to middle school, the middle school does not know there was a conflict. So we would like to see the ORS system modified where a student's OSIS number is tracked, which it already is, and it's confidential, that there's a flag that comes up when a student's OSIS number comes up numerous times. We would say, well, you know what, there's a problem with this student. Let's set in some interventions before this goes too far. When a student goes into another school, the school is aware that, you know what, there's a problem between Johnny and Joey. Let's be aware of it. Let's keep our eye on it. You know, there are some very common sense things that we can do, but it's very difficult to get these things implemented.
And also there's the accountability, and as you had pointed out, concern of administrators and teachers who feel threatened themselves, and they don't want a blemish on their school.
So let's point out that what's not even the blemish on the school. Let's point out that we're talking about bullying here that is criminal activity. We're not talking about pulling pigtails and, you know, throwing books around or whatever. So teachers fear for their safety if they intervene, and the bullies know this. Okay, so if we're not willing to put a stop to that and address that after everything else has failed, we're not addressing bullying.
Can either of you give us a profile of a bully?
Well, you know, when we look at the profile of a bully, again, we're looking at somebody who's behaving pretty aggressively. They pick out or single out a single person for whatever reason they decide. There's an incident recently that I was helping somebody with where a bully impersonated another child online. So you're looking at somebody who wants to get a specific result and is willing to go to almost any extreme, as you were saying now. We're talking about very criminal behavior in the way that they're behaving, as far as very aggressively, they're teasing, they're name-calling, they're starting arguments between different people, they're trying to get other people to turn on the person that they're attacking, basically.
But that's child's play when you consider that children are thinking about committing suicide. They're bringing weapons to school because they know they're going to have a confrontation. If they know they're going to have a confrontation, the adults in the school know they're having a confrontation.
And we've seen, unfortunately, too many incidents in recent years where those who've been bullied have resorted to suicide.
Sure.
Retaliate, but those who have resorted to suicide because they could not take the harassment.
4,400 deaths a year.
It's a national story, like you've said.
All right, now in your book, Karl, this is the self-confidence factor, a parent's guide to bully prevention. In the few moments we have, what is the guidance you provide?
What we try to do is teach parents how to instill more confidence in their children. You know, if your child wants to learn baseball or football, you go out into the schoolyard and you practice with them, right? But when do we ever sit down and take the time to teach our children how to be more confident? How to speak up, how to stand, how to walk, how to talk, how to deal with the situation when a bully approaches them. This guide will actually give you the tools and techniques to do that, and if it doesn't work, what is your next step? How to interact with these schools, who to speak to, how to go about it. So it's really a guide for parents to truly understand how to help their kids with bullying.
And what you, as a parent, what do you tell your child if confronted by a bully? How should that child, he or she, respond?
So fortunately, my children, at least that I'm aware of, have never been confronted by a bully, and they've each been in self-contained classes where they've gone to school with the same children since very, very early on. So there's a bit of a familial attitude amongst the classmates there. But I do have, I've had conversations with my son and my daughter that, let me know what's happening, tell a parent coordinator, tell someone in the school, and we'll try to get you the support that you need. Because of my political activism for students, my daughter is very afraid to speak to me because she's afraid that I'm going to walk into the school and knock down a door and say, take care of my child, when exactly the opposite is true when it comes to your children. But, I have had the conversation, say, let me know, and, we'll try to handle it quietly, through the system.
But there has to be much more of an awareness. Databases would help of those who have records.
It exists, it exists. But we have to use them effectively.
We're not paying enough attention to it. Is that what the basic problem is?
We're not using them effectively.
We're talking about bullying in the schools, but also it's a big problem. I mentioned at the top of this segment that it's the silent epidemic in the workplace. There's a lot of bullying that goes on there as well. Do you address that at all in your research?
Not in this book, but I have talked about some of the adult bullying that does go on in the workplace. I've even talked about the bullying that went on in the NFL. It's a major issue last year when you had a player literally walk out.
But a lot of it, too, is the gay bashing that goes on, too. That's a big problem.
Correct.
Well, it's a problem that's not easily solved, but I'm glad that you're both bringing the awareness to the public, you through the Parents Union and you through your book. So Sam Pirozzolo and Karl Romain, thank you very much for joining us and for sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
And that'll do it for our program this week. If you have any comments or wish to see this broadcast again, log on to our website at pix11.com/newscloseup. I'm Marvin Scott. Thanks so much for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday, everyone.